We've got the Masters champ back on the PGA Tour this week. What to expect from Rory McIlroy when he defends at the Zurich Classic? And what about from here on out? How many more wins for Rory in 2025? We're going to set our own over-under for the rest of the season. And how about the next big winner on tour? Who's the kind of player who's never won that you could cash in on in a few weeks coming up here? And of course, we have picks and other predictions to get to for the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. Chris Brees and Will Gray. Don't call it an off week, Will, because all of these guys want to win, and a lot of them want to win for the first time.
Absolutely. This is definitely a one-off dynamic. It's a unique situation at TPC Louisiana. You've got the team environment. Sometimes these partnerships come together and you're like, how did these guys exactly form a partnership? And then you see they're 23 under through 4 rounds and it makes a little bit more sense. And other times maybe the finger pointing goes both ways here. And you have a little bit of not quite infighting, but it makes for some interesting dynamics inside the ropes.
Yep. Some teams are brand new. Some teams have been around for a very long time. We've got a pretty good idea of this very top-heavy for Rory and and Lowry list, and then everybody else. What do you think of that number? Any reason to look at McIlroy and Lowry this week, do you think?
I mean, they're kind of in the Scheffler zone that we see in individual events this year, right? I mean, maybe it's something we're going to see those prices for Rory when he gets back to playing on his own ball in a couple weeks, but I mean, they're there for a reason. They were one of the betting favorites last year before winning in a playoff. I do think that this is one where we've seen some long shots come through. You think back to a couple years ago, when it was Wyndham Clark and Beau Hossler, and they were, fighting with Davis Riley and Nick Hardy, and those were two where you're like, I didn't really see those two coming. So it's understandable to see McIlroy and Lowry at that price. We've already seen from DraftKings that they've gotten 35% of the pre-tournament handle. So there's a lot of people rushing to the window to bet Rory as he makes his first start since completing that career Grand Slam. But then you've got a 2-time major champion in Collin Morikawa right behind him. And it very quickly gets into that 20 to 30 to 1 range where, remember, this week's dynamic, you get 80 teams, 82-man teams. You're cutting it down to top 33 in ties after Friday. So it's a little bit of a different calculus, a little bit of a different handicap than you do with a normal full field individual event.
Let's get into some picks, how the people can make some money this week. You love Joel Dahmen this week for a top 20. Why is that, given everything that happened last week with him?
Oh man, that was brutal.
Yeah.
That was just a brutal melt. Joel is a great asset for golf, and he's someone that I think a lot of golf fans find relatable, and I think that one of the most relatable things about him was what he said Sunday afterwards, where he stepped to the mic and really just owned it and said, I'm in shock and I don't know what just happened. He was trying to go wire to wire in Punta Cana, played his last 3 holes in 3 over, lost by a shot. Just it looked sloppy. He missed basically a tap in on the 71st hole. So that's hard to bounce back from, especially if you're talking about trying to win. But I do like the vibes of this Joel Dahmen, Harry Higgs pairing. No two cooler guys in the field this week. They're going to have a lot of fan support, I'm sure, down in the Big Easy. But again, this is, looking at the numbers where I'm getting plus 230 for a top 20 finish. When you have 80 to start the week, you want them to have a solid start. You're going to play 1 round each in 4-ball, which is best ball, and then foursomes alternate shot. And so once you make the weekend, you got a better than 50% chance of cracking the top 20 once you're there. So the hard part is getting it done on Thursday and Friday. Joel Dahmen actually has a pretty good record at this event, having played with other partners. But I think riding some of the positive momentum of his play last week in the DR could outweigh the tough stretch down the end.
We've seen from Dahmen, he's the kind of player who's not going to feel sorry for himself from what happened. He's going to fight. He's going to keep wanting to get better and better, and that will be fuel, I think, to have a good enough week this week to prove something. I mean, if you watched Full Swing the last couple of years from Joel Dahmen, he's the kind of guy who is going to come back out and not say, oh, woe is me, last week happened, I'm not going to care this week. I think he's going to play well too.
Yeah, there's definitely the bounce back potential is going to be what I would call high variance, right? This could be an early trunk slam, or it could carry over and he could really find the positives. I do think that pairing with someone like Harry Higgs that has that fun demeanor both inside and outside the ropes, and even just getting into this team format where it's not everything is not going to be the same as what he went through last week in Punta Cana. You're already changing your dynamic. You're changing some of your warm-up. You're changing some of your thought process. And a little bit of that change could go a long way in helping him shake off some of those those skeletons down the stretch.
So that's a top 20. I have a top 22, not as juicy of odds, but I'm really intrigued by this very young former teammate pairing from Stanford of Michael Thorbjornsen and Carl Phillips. Forget the fact that these guys almost look identical in their headshots. I'm not joking. When I did Phillips' headshot,
pretty close,
I had to go back and make sure I wasn't looking at Thorbjornsen again because it was so similar. Both of these guys can play golf, man. We've seen Phillips win a month ago in Puerto Rico. He's already in there. Thorbjornsen's been being talked about for over a year now. T2 last week at Corrales, so he's playing pretty well too. These young guys, don't you think they really want to prove themselves? And a great place to do that is to do it here when you already have that team atmosphere, the team vibe that you just came from college to do. And it's the kind of event where we see a lot of first-time winners. And these guys, these young guys, what do you think? Want to win this as much as anybody.
For sure, and I think that that there's also a difference with this approach of a top 20 ticket versus going for the outright. I will say when I look at this team, and I saw you had them on your notes, I just think of the Stanford Cardinal tree with the googly eyes, like in the stands and over in the hospitality area, watching them come down the stretch on the 72nd hole. Maybe we can make that happen if they're on the leaderboard. But yeah, I mean, Carl Phillips came from out of the clouds to win at the Puerto Rico Open. And there's always that thought of what's going to happen and how is a guy going to react to getting that first win on tour. You're into the Century next year. You're into the PGA Championship next month. It changes your schedule and how you really approach the season. And then you have someone like Thorbjornsen, who you're right, he's one of the top guys that has come out of the PGA Tour U ranks in the last couple of years. And so there are those expectations that he's going to get that win soon. So where do you find that balance? And I do like the camaraderie aspect of getting two guys that know each other's games well. They've played team competition before, albeit it's a little bit of a different setup with this. You're really in foursomes and four balls format is different than what they might have played in college, but it is a chance for them to combine forces and maybe throw back to the college days out on the farm in Palo Alto.
So you've got the young guns, and then you've got the grizzled vets. I'm going with the Collin Morikawa win this week, Will. For two reasons. Number one is the parity reason, the fact that we've talked week in and week out about Morikawa and how his game statistically might be better this year than it ever has been. It hasn't been wins, obviously, but he's hitting the ball so well. He's just not getting the victories. You know who we talked about with that last year? It was Rory McIlroy, right? Came so close a couple of times. Came here with Shane Lowry. All of a sudden, things clicked. He got some help from his partner. I think Morikawa can get help enough from his partner, who, Kitayama, let's face it, has not played great this year, but he's played well enough. I think if those two can feed off of each other, they've played together before, they know each other's game very well, they practice together all the time. I love the parity of Morikawa finally getting in the winner's circle in a year where it feels like he should have already won.
A couple of Vegas guys pairing together down in New Orleans could be an interesting combination. I will say, Chris, if Morikawa wins this event, it will frustrate me to no end if he gets his win.
I love it.
In this team format. Listen, I will say, I was scratching my head over the weekend at the RBC Heritage where he kind of popped, or I think he had a 66 on Friday, and then absolutely disappeared over the weekend. He had come into last week's event having finished T17 in every single start of 2025 and ended up finishing outside the top 50 in a 72-man field. So that was really his first no-show of 2025, and I'm interested to see how he bounces back and if that at all lingers into this week as we start, looking ahead to the Truist Championship and then the PGA Championship the week after. So we're getting into a typically busy stretch on the calendar that we all know very well. But listen, as we talked plenty of time on this show about Collin Morikawa and the ball striking numbers, they're there on paper. And then there's always something that's just a little bit missing when it comes to either holding putts or work around the greens or something off the tee goes awry that turns a win or a third into a T8 or a T12 or a T17. So it's understandable to see these guys as the second favorites on the board pre-tournament behind McIlroy and Lowry. A lot of that has to do with how well Morikawa has played throughout the 2025 season. But this is still going to be a pass for me. And I'll take my chances that Morikawa is not going to break this drought like we saw last week with Justin Thomas while I'm looking the other way.
I don't love the number. I know. I think the number is good enough for me with, again, just the parity aspect. You don't like Morikawa. You don't like Rory. Who do you like?
I mean, I think that we need to start any Zurich Classic discussion. You got to think about the guy that just almost won last week. We see here Andrew Novak teaming up with Ben Griffin, the nearly men of the PGA Tour in 2025. Andrew Novak, the only guy that has been in the final group on 3 different occasions, including last week at Harbour Town, where he nearly took down Justin Thomas in front of his South Carolina friends and family. And then you got Ben Griffin, who missed out on the Masters by, I mean, a thousandth of a point versus Michael Kim for that 50th spot in the world ranking. So he was watching from home. He also missed by a spot last week at Harbour Town. So he's coming in very motivated to try and make amends, and noting that he had a post on social media where he's like, one shot early in the year kind of cost me 2 spots in each of these really lucrative events. I think that these guys are still flying under the radar. You're sitting there at plus 2,200 for some of the better all-around players on the PGA Tour this year. They're both hungry, both looking for that first win on the PGA Tour. A lot to like here, and my hope, similar with the Dahmen, thought process. Although Novak doesn't really have the scar tissue that Joel's going to bring from the DR, it's nothing but greatness for what Andrew Novak did last week. I'm sure he wants that 8-footer back in the 72nd hole that would have been for the win. But still, he's playing some really good golf and starting to level up with the competition that he's facing week in and week out on tour. I think these two are going to be in the mix.
He's come close twice. When Brian Harman won in Texas, he was really close as well. So if those two are looking for their first victory, they've come very close. It feels like we've said that about a handful of players in just the last year alone. You talk about like the Eric Coles, the Griffins, the Novaks, all of these players, so many of them where you're saying they've got that gear, but do they have that next year? We're going to have a first-time winner, maybe multiple, coming up here in the next few weeks. So let's both give our predictions for the next first-time winner on the PGA Tour. There's a lot. I mean, if Novak and Griffin get it done, clearly they're the guys that are going to be first. Let's go individual, because you're going to win this week, right? Individual. Who do you got as the first-time winner coming up here?
I will say someone that was on the short list for me this week, and then also that I have circled in the next few weeks, similar to Andrew Novak, is Max Grazerman. And I think that there's a lot to like about his pairing this week with Nico Echeverria, who has won twice on the PGA Tour, but those two are third right now in handle at DraftKings behind only Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry. And then you've got Billy Horschel and Tom Hoagie, which is a pairing that is going to get a lot of attention from bettors and fans alike. Billy Horschel, the only guy that has won the Zurich in both the team and individual formats. But Grazerman has worked his way into the top 50 in the world ranking without a victory. A lot of close calls. You think back to the Wyndham last year where he was up by 3 or 4 shots and let it go down the stretch over those final 5 holes. But it was interesting at the Masters. You go by caddy bibs, and it's based on when guys register. Max Grazerman was bib number 2, which number 1 goes to the defending champion, Scotty Scheffler. So Max Grazerman was literally the first person to register on site for the Masters.
Love it.
He could have been there for 10 days for all I know. But he did not leave any stone unturned in making his Masters debut. I'm sure that was a huge week for him, and in trying to get through it. He was able to make the cut and played solid. Now we're kind of getting into the heart of the season, as we've said, and really the spring and the summer was where he did most of his damage last year. Late in the season, Wyndham, the 3M as well. He was in the mix in a couple in the fall. So I do think that Max Grazerman has the all-around game and the components, having been in the mix a couple different times, to potentially break through and not only get a win, but get a win pretty soon.
I was just going to say, people easily forget what happened last year. It was 3 second places.
Yeah.
After July. It was July and on. He had 3 second places, and I believe another top 4 or top 5 in the fall as well. We talk about these guys being so close. Denny McCarthy's been close. Gerard's been close. Alex Smalley's been close. Will, none of them have been closer than Jacob Bridgman. I mean, this guy has been second place twice recently. 5 top 15s alone in 2024. That's going back a year, showing that he's played really good golf for longer than this stretch. And here's what really gets me about Bridgman. We've seen him get a couple of second places, right? We've also seen him play some pretty poor golf by his standards. He seems like, if you look at his stats, could be hitting the ball a lot better than he is, and is still having these close finishes. He is losing strokes off the tee, and he's losing strokes approaching the green, and he's still top 20 total strokes gained. That tells me, and you tell me if you agree, that he can score. The guy knows how to get the ball in the hole, and even if he's not hitting the ball well off the tee and into the green, he's still finding ways to get into golf tournaments. All he needs to do is figure out that little minute detail in his swing, and things could go great.
I mean, that screams short game to me. We just saw on this clip reel, he's holing out from the junk, basically. So, I think that's always interesting when you're talking about handicapping guys, when they're off a little bit tee to green, but the short game and the putter specifically can get really hot. It's like, well, what's going to change first? Are they going to find their swing and really dial it in and have a chance to win? Or is the short game going to regress and then they're a mess, right, before they're able to get the full swing figured out? But I like the optimistic look you have here with Jacob Bridgman, that there might not be that much to fix tee to green to put himself in a position to have those chances to contend and to potentially get that win. And that's, a guy that you feel like you can trust coming down the stretch, having to make 8, 10, 12 footers, meaningful putts, up and downs for par in crunch time when it matters, and is still a guy that you're going to be getting a pretty good price on week in and week out until he does get that first win.
All these guys are going to get great prices. They all want to win. They all want to win big. They all want to be like this guy. Rory's got 3 victories so far through April in 2025, and we're starting to wonder, what's his overall win total going to be for the rest of the year? The first thing we have to do is handicap it in terms of how many events is he actually going to play. That's number one we got to talk about. If I was going to tell you, if he's at 3 right now, I set it at 4.5, over under 4.5, assuming he's going to get another one, which means he's got to get one after that. What would your reaction be to 4.5?
I probably would lean over, which is, it's crazy. I got to look back and see the last time Rory McIlroy won 5 times on tour. It's been a minute, but he is playing so well and is very clearly the best player on the PGA Tour in 2025, and now has the biggest gorilla in golf off his back, having completed the career Grand Slam. I do think it's going to free him up. There's going to be so much attention on him at all of the majors, but particularly, the 2 that stand out are going back to Quail Hollow next month for the PGA Championship, where he has won 4 times. He's going to be the betting favorite by a slight edge, I think, over Scotty Scheffler by the time we get to Charlotte. And then the Open, going back to Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland, he's going to have all the support. Such an emotional miscut there in 2019. I don't know that Oakmont is as good of a fit for him as it might be for Scheffler, so you see his number drop out a little bit. But if you figure that Rory's going to, you had the playoffs and some other signature events, you figure, and plus this week at the Zurich, where he's defending champion, he's going to defend at the Truist in a couple weeks, albeit at a different course. If he's going to make 10 more starts thereabouts in 2025, what are the chances that he picks off 2 of them? Given how well he's playing right now, I will take the over. I don't think we're going to get into the Scheffler zone of where he's going to win 7 or 8 times in 2025, which was just so remarkable. Last year, Scotty Scheffler scooping everything in sight. But if the number's 4.5, Chris, I'm going to go the over.
Okay. DraftKings has the Rory Slam at plus 6,500. Obviously, it is ridiculous to think that somebody could do that. That's why the odds are so high. Here's what I find fascinating about this entire thing. The Masters has always been his monkey, right? The U.S. Open has been statistically his best major overall in terms of competing and being there on Sunday. You saw the epitome of it was last year when he lost. The Open has been his sneaky good major, where you think, okay, I don't really assume him to do much this week, and then all of a sudden he's there on Sunday, maybe with a great chance, maybe with a small chance, but albeit a chance. And then the PGA, like you say, is at his course. I mean, Rory's got 2 or 3 courses that he's going to play great at every year. If I set it at 4.5, I was thinking I was going to be sneaky with the under, but I think I agree with you now. I think 4.5 over would probably be my moneymaker there.
I mean, Rory back-to-back years has been runner-up at the U.S. Open. It would be amazing if he's able to get across the line there and go 2-2-1 to make for a great Wikipedia grid. But you're right. There are just those places that guys, their ears perk up and they just feel a little bit, they're walking with a bit of a better stride. And Quail Hollow is the epitome of that notion for Rory McIlroy. It's a place where he just seems to get to another level. Was not able to get it done in 2017. The last time the PGA was there when Justin Thomas won, but certainly is going to be in a different mindset coming into next month's event with at least 3 wins, potentially 4. Who knows?
Last thing here, if he wins at Quail Hollow, what's the slam odd going to be? Will it be under 3,000?
I get my abacus out and think about this, but I would expect, yeah, we're going to be under 30-1 for him to take the next two if he's able to win the first two. We haven't had someone win the first two majors of the year since Spieth back in 2015 when it was Masters and U.S. Open. So it's been a while. Maybe we're due, Chris.